fledgling town of Durango is devastated by a great fire, an event which deals a heavy blow to its economy and threatens to wipe the new boomtown off the map. Journey to a time when Durango was on the frontier of the Wild West. This is Out West Durango. The town of Durango, Colorado, first established in 1881, was a booming railroad hub for area mining operations. Only 8 years after incorporation, it boasted a world-class hotel and more saloons than you could shake a stick at. By 1889, it was already known as one of the most promising young cities of the far west. But Durango's quick growth soon led to disaster.
Durango grew because of the railroad. The railroad was the ultimate, fastest, year-round, safest means to get from here to there. Nothing else equaled it in the 19th century. So Durango started off with a real good start. The Durango Trust encouraged everyone who came to Durango in 1880 and 1881 to build with brick and stone because they were worried about fire. Fire was a big bugaboo of the 19th century, but people came. Do they want to spend the time or the money to build buildings with brick or stone? No. They want to get on the ground floor, get their building up, get the business going, make money. So they built with wooden buildings.
The Denver and Rio Grande Railroad had seen fire devastate similar towns across the country, but its warnings were not heeded. In the afternoon of July 1st, 1889, a fire broke out in the back of Wagner's restaurant at what is now 9th and Main. Fed by a strong western wind, the fire quickly spread through the wooden frame buildings of the business district.
The dried wood caught just bingo like that, and it was often flaming, and there was dynamite in some of the buildings, and they then passed a city ordinance, we're not going to have dynamite in the buildings, things like that. But in the haste to build the town and make money, these things happened, and when the fire got going, which you knew it was going to get going, they knew it would eventually burn down because towns did burn down in those days. It was kind of urban renewal. And so there was nothing they could do to stop it, nothing.
A few moments after the alarm had been sounded, the fire had already swept to the east side of the street where it consumed a dance hall and a theater. It flashed across the block to 2nd Avenue, where it consumed a newspaper office. Within the first few minutes of the fire, the firehouse was also set ablaze, along with the brand new Silsby pumper that was parked inside it.
The town city fathers had invested in this really nice pumper, one of the best in the country at that time, and it was to pump water, but when the fire, when the city hall and everything else went up in smoke, they tried to get it out, got it out, but it was already damaged enough they couldn't use it. I mean, that was one of the things that really they had hopes that could stop it. It was a brand new pumper. I mean,
Across the street was the courthouse, where the officials hastily locked up records in brick vaults before the fire engulfed the massive wooden building.
People were really afraid because they didn't know you had dynamite stored in some of the buildings. Obviously you had kerosene, you had coal in people's basement, and it was just an inferno once it got going. And firemen passed out, obviously, some of them who were trying to fight it. Other people had smoke, problems with smoke. And the volunteers, because our fire department wasn't that large, but it was just the citizens of Durango, got out a bucket brigade and tried to do what they could do to stop it.
The firemen, finding it useless to attempt to save any businesses north of the fire with the heavy winds, attempted to battle the flames that threatened the beautiful residences on the boulevard, which is 3rd Avenue today. But the flames beat them there. Homes on the boulevard were already in flames.
Initially, it started in the saloon block, and the good people in town said, aha, it's the wrath of God. It actually started in the red light district and then burned up to the saloon district. Then it crossed Main Street and moved on to 2nd Avenue, which was at that point a residential and business area, and then on to the boulevard, or present 3rd Avenue. And all of a sudden, it wasn't the wrath of God anymore burning out Sodom and Gomorrah. It was a real fire. When it got up on 3rd Avenue, it burned down the Episcopal Church, it burned down the Methodist Church, it burned down the Presbyterian Church, but it left the Baptist Church standing. Wouldn't you have liked to have been there the next Sunday when the Baptist preacher gave his sermon about how the wrath of God has taken care of all the churches except ours?
A schoolgirl described the scene as she witnessed it from north of the fire.
The wind was blowing a gale. Billowing smoke from flames shooting high in the air from the burning buildings obscured the sun like a dark day. In North Durango, our mothers and other housewives were gathering clothing, bedding, utensils, and valuables in huge bundles on the lawns, ready to flee to the hills if the flames came any closer to the bridge.
The flames raged so ferociously that there was fear that the entire town would burn. But the wind died down late in the afternoon, and the last buildings in the track of the fire were blown up to make sure the flames would not spread any further.
What really stopped it was the dynamiting of the buildings, so that that not only blew out the fire, but it also took out most of the timber, the dried wood. And that was the real problem. That wood had been dried for a decade, and it was just, Durango was waiting for a fire to happen.
Amazingly, no deaths were reported as a result of the fire. As to the origin of the fire, there was very serious suspicion that it was set by an arsonist. While the fire raged in the business district, an eyewitness reported seeing an individual pouring kerosene on the front of the Presbyterian church and setting fire to it. This led officials to believe that the fire that had erupted so quickly in Wagner's restaurant was also the work of arson and part of an organized attempt to burn the entire city.
Well, one of the reasons they were worried about arson and arsonists in town was because they had tried to clamp down on the red light district. They were passing city ordinances, and more important, they were enforcing city ordinances about what was going on. And also, they were very much concerned about tramps. They were always concerned about tramps, not just in Durango, but elsewhere. And they were concerned that someone might have started a fire so they could loot. And so there was a very real fear that this was set on purpose. The nearest post was Fort Lewis, which at that point was 18 miles, depending on which way you came in, outside of Durango. And they sent in a squad of cavalry to guard the town. And some of the citizens automatically thought we ought to have a vigilante committee to hang anyone who would loot, and you can understand why they would. But fortunately, they didn't take to hanging anybody. I mean, they had people marching up and down the street with guns, which is sometimes more dangerous than anything else. But it was a tense period of time in that first part of that month, because they didn't know if it might not start again, just in case there was someone who had started, who was vengeance.
Durango's Great Fire became an example for other frontier towns. Bayfield, its neighbor to the east, constructed a stone firewall in the middle of town to prevent a potential fire from spreading. The people of Durango itself were not disheartened. In fact, the Great Fire became an opportunity for the town. Businessmen, along with many homeowners, rebuilt in brick and stone, bringing the town more impressive architecture. Harper's reported that the fire would allow Durango to reorganize the business district into blocks of equal size, such as Denver. And seeing the people's determination, the Rocky Mountain Post reported that, Phoenix-like, Durango would rise from her ashes and soon resume her position as the metropolis of the Southwest.